in.
What's up, big fellas? This is Konvos with Kraig. With me, as always, is the shoot. I can't think of anything for you right now, Noah. So just go
Gosh.
ahead and say your name.
Well, it's Noah. What's up, guys? We're glad to have you all here. We're joined today by Jared, and he's going to talk to us about his app that he's developing in the trading card hobby. So we're going to dive a little bit into trading card hobby, what that is, and Jared's going to share his app and how he is planning on catering to people who are in the hobby. But before we do that, Craig is going to start us off with the Bible verse for this episode.
Yes, the verse is 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. But if we walk in the light as he himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin.
Sweet.
Pretty fat, eh?
Good
Cool.
stuff. Well, all right, Jared. We'd love to hear a little bit about how, first off, like how'd you get into collecting? So I know myself, I've been collecting since COVID. Craig Paul, I don't think collects very much. He's got some Marvel cards at his
I'm
his
not a
house.
big I'm not a big collector, but my oldest brother, he's big into the hobby of collecting mainly football cards and things like that.
Yeah.
He takes me to his local card shop all the time back home.
Yeah. So Jared, how'd you get into collecting trading cards?
So first of all, very cool that y'all do a Bible verse at the beginning. I think that's awesome. That's a big part of my life. So definitely like to see that. Also, as far as the getting into collecting, I had a buddy that's been in it since about 2012, I guess, and he kept telling me like, "Hey, dude, you need to get into cards." You know, I was like, I don't know. I'm like a grown man. I don't need to get into cards. So it's just kind of didn't really understand what was happening. I mean, I collected when I was younger. I mean, back in the early 90s and stuff. But anyways, I walked into a card show with him back in October of last year. So this was almost a year ago. And that summer, I had bought a few packs of Prism blasters, like Prism baseball. So not even anything that's like super valuable, right? I just saw them at the store, and he always told me, "Hey, if you find cards, you should pick some up because they're hard to find right now." And I was like, okay. So I got a few boxes of the blasters, and out of one of those boxes, I pulled 101 Babe Ruth Prism. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And so I called him and I was like, "So is this really like a 101? Like, what does that mean?" And he's like, "Dude, that's like the only one. That's what it means. It's a 1 of 1." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty cool." So we go to this card show. He has this box of cards and he has all this stuff. And I have my one card, and we walk in, and the guy at the very beginning has the rainbow. He's putting together the rainbow. And I was like, "Dude, look, it's my card." And I didn't even know what a rainbow was. And he's like, "That's like ridiculous that this guy's right here. Like, what are the chances of this happening?" And so I ended up making a deal with that guy. He got my 101, and I got a couple cards from him and some cash. And I was like, "So there's money in this." Okay. so I thought it was interesting. So since then, I've actually fell in love with the actual collecting aspect and less about the money. But obviously, having some value in cards is nice, but more than anything, I just like the actual collecting aspect. So that's where I'm at now.
For sure.
Cool.
What is the best card you've had so far? Is it the Babe Ruth? What is your favorite? Maybe you can tell us both. The most valuable card you've had up to this point, and maybe your most favorite in your personal collection.
Yeah. So that card, value wise, was probably the most valuable. I think the comps on it, I mean, it was a 101, but there was like some number to 10s that had sold and stuff. And so the deal ended up being about a $6,000 deal. So it was a pretty fancy card.
Yeah.
But that being said, I've had a couple other ones since then that were kind of in that, 3,000 to 5,000 range, just as part of, the deal. That kind of I ended up trading for and kind of worked deals on those. But as far as like my favorite stuff, I did start piecing Steph Curry. So I have a couple of his rookies, just the papers, nothing super fancy. It's the Panini one and the prestige ones, so they're not high end, but I really like those. I like Steph Curry a lot. And then I've gotten into Star Wars a little bit, so I actually have the original 77 77 set from Star Wars. So I finally picked up the number 1 of that, so I have the first 8 of the rookies of those, and they're not in great condition, but I like them anyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's still a pretty awesome set.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Joe, you have an app, or you're coming out with an app for cards.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right, yeah. So the app that we're building is called Tradenight, and so Tradenightapp.com is where you can sign up for that. It is not a full-fledged app yet, but what we are doing is, as I've seen going into the hobby, my background's in marketing and build websites and all that stuff my entire life. But what I have seen is that the hobby itself, in terms of collectors, and really a lot of different hobbies, not just card collectors, but there's so little technology involved in those worlds because it's cardboard that you're trading. There's not a lot, of technology there, which I thought was interesting. Given that there's so many people that want to be connected, there's not a good way to stay connected and to get connected to card shows. So as I went with my friend, I was like, so how do you find out about these things? And he said, well, Dallas Card Show is kind of the biggest one around. We're about an hour and a half from Dallas Card Show. So that's the one I went to. But he's like, I mean, you just have to look and find them or whatever. They're just they're around. And I was like, okay, seems like there should be a better way to do that. Like all these people, there should be a better way to get connected to card shows. And then in Facebook groups, I've seen people posting, hey, I want to set up a trade night. Who's up for meeting up? But you have this group of people all over Texas or all over the United States. You can't just like connect them. Like you can't just drive down the street. So my thought was, how do we segment the audience? How do we get people to be able to connect on a local level? So if I'm in Burleson or I'm in Arlington or I'm in, Colorado Springs or whatever it is, I need to find people just in my city. And how do I do that? So what our app will eventually do, and right now we're collecting data. So if you opt into that on the website, then you would you put your phone number, name, and zip code basically. And so what we'll do eventually, and we're starting to do now, is work with card shops and work with collectors, individual collectors that want to set up a trade night. And we will be able to text out to a given zip code or multiple zip codes in an area to say, hey, there's a trade night happening. And then they would get that data. They'd be able to get that information, on a whole hyper local level, which they've never been able to do before. So that's what the app will eventually do. Eventually, collectors will be able to set up their own trade night, and it'll automatically text out a given radius that the trade night's happening, and they can do the details and all that stuff. For now, it's a pretty manual process, but we are starting to work with some people that want to set up their own and collect data that way.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
That's awesome. So I noticed within the Facebook group, so you're already currently working with a guy who has started shows, right, Shane? He's done the Konvos shows. So you're already working with someone basically hand in hand, already trying to set up, hey, this guy can set up these trade nights and will be a primary user of your app.
Right. So what our hope is, our hope is to connect collectors and allow collectors to basically set up their own trade nights in their own cities. That'll be completely free. It'll be free for the users. We will then work with card shows and say, hey, card show, whatever, Shane's, for instance, we can text out to 500 or 1,000 people within this given radius of 100 miles or whatever it is. And it'll, go out to all those people, and it's going to cost this much to do that. So they would not have access to those numbers. It's our database. They would just be kind of the funds to be able to fund the app developments and allow the users to use it for free. So we're not selling the information. We're not selling the people's numbers or anything like that. We're working with the card shows. They pay us for access to those, and then we text out to let people know that there's an event happening.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that makes a lot of sense, considering really people are getting their show information from really only Facebook, I guess. That's, when I'm looking at shows, I only get it from Facebook. So, if you're looking to get people's phone numbers, it seems like, there are a ton of people on Facebook, sure, but you're reaching a much broader audience if you can send it direct to somebody's phone instead of depending on them being in a specific Facebook or, a specific Facebook group, or, getting hit with that right algorithm to get it, their proper ad or something like that, you can hit everybody who would be interested. So that's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah. And the goal of the collector, right? I mean, as collectors, we want to get connected to other collectors. So through trade nights, and we also want to get connected to card shows. And so card shows need people at the show. So I mean, we're hitting all of the pain points. That's the goal with this, is to really connect the collectors as much as possible. And this doesn't have to stop with cards. Like the whole point of creating it, we're starting hyper local, so we're doing very specific groups of people, so card collectors, for instance. But I mean, down the road, if somebody wants to, if we want to target to where we start signing people up for like events in a given area, maybe it's a music event or something, like you could, in theory, you could do that. Like we would be able to use the app for those purposes. Then the people could sign up and say, I want to know about music events and I want to know about card collection shows. And that's it. And that's all they're going to get, is events in their area, a handful of days before the event, to get that information to them.
That's kind of cool. Like kind of, yeah, I think that's actually a pretty cool idea. Like say like just kind of customize like, hey, I don't want to know about these type of things that happen in my area, and it kind of gets into the phone.
Right.
So I know you're probably still in the early, like you said you're still in the early stages of that app, but do you know like when, or at least have a target estimate of release, or at least
so we don't, but what we're doing right now is it's every single step of the way we're testing. Like I just had a conversation this morning with my developer. How do we do this? How do we make this better for people? Like we literally launched it last week and we said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're collecting data and we're going to see, how that looks. So we got some organic stuff. Our ads are starting up this week to start collecting that data. But then, today I had the conversation. I said, what if we set up just a landing page and we went to, for instance, there's a guy in Arlington that wants to set up an event, a trade night. And I said, here's your landing page. It says Arlington Trade Night to be determined. Here's the date. Sign up here. It tells a little bit about the app. So he has that page now to collect information. And all of the people that sign up through that will not only end up in our larger system, but they also end up specific to that event. Yeah. So if they only want to be targeted about that event, and that's the only event they want to know about, that's all they're ever going to hear about.
Yeah.
But then we'll give them the opportunity to sign up for other events. So that's kind of where we're at, is we're like, it seems like every day I'm having a conversation about what can we do to improve this? What can we do to get here? How can we make, the next step better? And that's why I'm having conversations. I'll open invitation. Anyone that wants to have a conversation about this and give me feedback on what you think needs to be created, I would love that. I would love to have conversations with people and just talk it through, figure out what's actually going to be valuable in the next step.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like the app is coming along really well. We're excited to see it develop. Definitely, I personally have signed up through your link. Excited to see more of what that turns into. Just out of curiosity, as you mentioned, technology needing to play a larger role in, something like trading cards, if it's been around since, since 70s and earlier even than that, but it starting to really grow in the 70s and, of course, later on in the 80s and 90s, but now in the, 2022, we're now starting to meet this hobby with technology. What do you think about things like, NFTs are even growing too, but you have these apps like Star Wars has an app. Topps has an app for all of their different sets, Star Wars, Marvel, baseball, hockey, whatever else. Panini has their apps, football, basketball, where you can go on there and trade cards. Obviously that is nowhere near same level of value, if you were to resell or anything like that as a physical card. But is that something you think will continue to do well, or do you think that's something that these companies, Topps and Panini, these people who are making cards, kind of just threw it out there to see if it works and it'll crash?
My take on that is that's a totally different market.
Sure.
I think that if you're going to get involved in NFTs and that kind of stuff, I do think it's around for a long time. I don't think that it's going away anytime soon. I've been in technology long enough. Like I said, I've been building websites literally for 25 years. and it's just, I've seen changes in the world of technology. I think that people that are interested in cards are going to be interested in, well, people interested in any collectible, they're going to find their thing they're interested in the most. And
Yeah.
it could be cardboard, it could be, NFTs, it could be whatever, could be a combination of. And I don't think that you have to choose one over the other. So I mean,
Right.
if you're interested in that, go for it,
Yeah. Do you think that, as our world as a whole grows more is ingrained in technology, do you think that some, physical collectibles like cards or things like that, do you think they will continue to be as big of a part of our lives as they are now? Or do you think that will decrease over time? Will it stay about the same? Just kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that as well.
It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, I'm part of the generation that still remembers rotary dial phones and still remembers not having a cell phone.
Mhm.
You guys are probably not part of that generation. So, that being said, I mean, the technology changes a lot of things. But if you look at the history of things, what hasn't changed is people's always being interested in some form of antique, and the
Mhm.
antiques being valuable to some degree for certain people. You guys in 20 years may not want anything to do with technology and may want to come back and say, oh, look at this, piece of cardboard that I collected when I was a kid. That's exactly what I'm doing. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm 37 years old. So it's like, I remember only having cards. I remember not being
Right.
able to call someone up, whenever you feel like it. Like I remember those things, but, and it changes over time. I mean, every that's just a cultural thing. It's going to change. And, but I don't think there's ever a point in my lifetime, I don't think there's ever a point where tangible collectibles go away completely, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For sure. And I guess, Craig and I collected as, when we're elementary school age, things like that, and took a break for a while, but now we're at that age where like, hey, this is fun again. I remember doing
Mhm.
this as a kid. It's fun. And so, maybe just the repetition of that process, happened to the generation before us and is likely to happen in the generation after. So maybe that is what'll drive it. But
With
well,
that being said,
yeah, I think
looking for-
we're getting kicked off here in a minute. So
Jared,
Craig, you want to
before we
close us
let
off?
you go, want to say, oh, sorry, no, I just interrupted you.
Go for it. You got it.
I was gonna say, thanks for coming on. We was glad to learn more about your app and a little bit about you. Can you tell us what's the website again?
Tradenightapp.com.
So big
Sweet.
fellas, be sure to go check that out. And with that being said, y'all have a blessed day and see y'all real soon.
All right. Thanks again, Jared. All
See
right.
y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, man.
Jared.
Have a good one.